New. Gosh, that's awful. World order.
What have I discovered about Bilderberg? The BBC was able to get the documents decades ago that they helped found the Euro, which was actually a Nazi German plan to take over countries economically. Know that?
The Simpsons serves as a chosen medium through which the elite unveil their secret plans. The show's creator, Matt Groening, has been implicated in various events such as the alleged involvement in the Freemasonry, the death of Jeffrey Epstein, and the September 11th attacks.
This is what real-world conspiracies look like.
Question: what group, institution, person, family do you believe is behind the New World Order, the Matrix that everyone talks about? Put into the comments. I really want to hear what you think it is.
Well, there's certainly a cabal of people who have mass influence over the world who are not people we elect or know their names. I would never kill myself. I'll start by saying that.
In this episode today, we'll be discussing the big conspiracy of the New World Order, the Matrix. Who is behind it? What is behind it? Is it even a thing?
Is the Matrix as a whole. To say psychological operations are constant. They constantly decide how they want you to think and what they can do to make you believe that.
But before we get into any of that, please do me one massive favor. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. In order for this channel to grow, I'm going to need your support. I'm going to need your subscriptions. If even 10% of you subscribe, this channel will be much, much further up the algorithm and doing much, much better. In my opinion, anyway. However, without further ado, let's get into the episode. So like I said, I'm going to break this down into three
Are you kidding? Does this whole plant have some disease where it can't see that he's an idiot?
three main points. And those three main points will be kind of the overarching arguments that people use to describe and pin what the New World Order is, what the Matrix is, who they believe is behind it.
There's a secret meeting place.
Yes, let's go inside.
Sounds good.
I saw weird stuff in that place last night. Weird, strange, sick, twisted, eerie, godless, evil stuff. And I want in.
We don't know what you're talking about, Hubba.
And you can't join the Stonecutters because it's too exclusive.
Oh, well, that was a real nice secret organization we had once.
When you think of secret societies, when you think of shadowy governments, many people the term the Illuminati, Freemasonry, the Bilderberg Group.
What have I discovered about Bilderberg? The BBC was able to get the documents decades ago that they helped found the Euro, which was actually a Nazi German plan to take over countries economically. No, that's on record.
I've heard one called the Round Table as well. Comes to mind when people discuss this. These are the people behind the controlling forces. These are the powers behind the powers. People that really run government. Organizations that control and are the puppet masters behind the puppets that are politicians. How much truth is in that?
Components of the New World Order conspiracy theory also maintain just how strange it was when in 2011 a doomsday comet Elenin was scheduled to possibly enter the Earth's atmosphere, triggering a cataclysmic event. President Barack Obama was where? Denver, Colorado. But why though? The greatest argument against any of this meaning anything or mattering at all is the question of why. If the New World Order did exist, would they make all this obvious weirdo stuff plain as day for everyone to see? Some people argue that it's just some Colorado politicians having fun, maybe even drumming up tourism. Get back some of that $2 billion, you know? The Fly Denver website also has some goofs with the theory, with images of reptile people on cell phones, suggesting the airport contains the Illuminati headquarters. Ultimately, the New World Order conspiracy kinda just doesn't work because there's no clear idea as to who the New World Order would even be. Is it Nazis? Is it aliens? Is it Beyonce and Jay-Z? It's kind of like how flat earthers agree that the earth is flat, but don't really agree on much else. I'm not a flat earther. For the last time. While a bit of a head scratcher, at the end of the day, it all does seem pretty absurd. Like, you mean to tell me if you got a bunch of stuff you want to keep secret, you're gonna put this thing anywhere near it? I don't think so.
Some people point to Denver Airport and its architecture and how it was curated and created as proof of evidence. Others used more anecdotal, loosely researched evidence as point of the conspiracy of secret societies. However, some people use The Simpsons.
I always talk about how there's truth in movies, comedy, TV shows, and even when it comes to cartoons such as The Simpsons and lies in the news. This is all about Freemasonry, this world of duality. Let's take a listen to this scene here from The Simpsons.
They're all covered with filthy germs, aren't they, Smithers?
Why, what do you mean, sir?
Freemasons run the country!
Not only this country, but the entire world.
Many different ways have been explored to prove secret societies, but how true are they?
Cultivated this self-perception right from the start. Its members rise to the very pinnacles of power, like George Walker Bush, for example. When Bush contested the presidency with Democrat John Kerry, it was a battle between two bonesmen.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
Only rarely do bizarre aspects of the society become public knowledge. Inside the tomb, members are said to have their own standard time, which differs from ours by 5 minutes. It's believed that cutlery, which once belonged to Adolf Hitler, is preserved here.
Skull and Bones. What are Skull and Bones? Well, we know that they were founded in the University of Yale. We know that George W. Bush, Jim Carrey, George H. Bush as well have all been a part of it. Many people believe with the iconography of their symbol, the secrecy around it, the way in which George H. and George W. and Jim Carrey do not discuss what happened there. They genuinely believe that this is proof of secret societies. They genuinely believe that this is the power behind the institutions of governments, the secret workings of how government really runs. And when chaotic things happen, people turn to these.
And in their desperation, they turn to a man they didn't fully understand.
Conspiracies as proof of who is really behind it. Now, what's the problem with some of that? First of all, when you look at the body language of some of them, whether that be George W., Jim Carrey in this instant, it looks quite tongue-in-cheek, it looks like a joke. One thing I will say is secrecy is not a proof of misdoing and mistrust. It doesn't elicit trust, but it's not proof of trust. Secondly, when you look at the overall statistics and numbers behind university graduates from Yale, it seems that Harvard has the most, Yale has the second most, and Princeton in a close third, which indicates to me, are there secret societies in Harvard? Or is this more to do with elitism and nepotism than it is to do with secret societies? When you look into the Illuminati, that's been dispelled many times.
2013, Beyoncé's Super Bowl performance gave conspiracy theorists whiplash when she flashed the Rock Nation hand symbol at halftime, a move these theorists claimed was evidence of her allegiance to the Illuminati. Beyoncé and Jay-Z aren't the only hitmakers suspected of being members of the elusive group. There's the late Whitney Houston, Justin Bieber, Bono, Eminem, Nicki Minaj, Lil Wayne, and Dr. Dre to round out the list, and even the late R&B star Aaliyah.
The Illuminati. I've had people on here and they talk about the Illuminati. Do you believe in it?
Fuck no. Literally, people come on and think it's real?
Yeah.
Okay, so like, what are the other ones? There's the Illuminati, and who are the other ones that are like that? There's like other secret groups, right?
Yes, secret societies.
Right? I'm like, I'm rich as fuck. I'm Jewish. Nobody asked me to join any of them secret societies, right? Nobody. I'm like, hello? Can I at least get an invite to a cocktail party?
Yet the historical fact is the Illuminati was never more than a moderately successful boys' club that managed to wield a small amount of power in Bavaria before it was disbanded. Conspiracy theories nevertheless abound concerning a modern Illuminati, probably because it's more comfortable for people to believe that even when insane, really stupid stuff is being done by our governments, it's because someone is secretly pulling the strings to a master plan, instead of the simple truth that sometimes we put idiots in charge. But then again, that's exactly what we'd say if we were secretly part of the Illuminati.
Proving that this is a group that hasn't been in function for over 100 years. There's very much a lack of evidence behind anyone who quotes them, mentions them.
No, so there was a crossroads where we were both invited to an Illuminati thing, and it had to be one or the other of us, and decisions had to be made. So it was both of us, we were equal. One of us had to cut off all their hair and couldn't do the sideburn thing no more with the points. And the next person, they said, was going to get $200 million because they were going to pay him $10 million a movie to do 20 movies. And that's how the conversation happened. One of those persons turned out to be Ludacris, and the other person turned out to be Cat Williams. Now,
if it is true, it is a well kept secret, very well hidden. However, the amount of time that's been dispelled, the lack of forthcoming evidence, forthcoming research behind how the inner workings work, behind the people that have done the exposés, to me, at the very least, lacks credence and needs further investigating before we take this as a tangible conspiracy that we should be taking going forward. When you look at Freemasonry,
there's definitely a reason why gentlemen throughout history have entered the Masonic Lodge and become a brother.
Masonry at its heart, or what's called Blue Lodge Masonry, they are fraternities. There's no women allowed in Masonry. In some ways, it's just a social club for men. There were also times when I was a little bit scared what I had gotten into. Masonry has a side that is extremely old. A lot of presidents, and even before the U.S., long before the U.S., there were lodges. George Washington was a Mason, Lincoln was a Mason. Pretty much all the presidents, up until the last two, actually were Mason.
To me, Freemasonry, again, resembles quite similar to Skull and Bones, where it has a greater relationship with elitism, kind of the old boys club, sort of like a private members club for what appears to be white males, but they, have opened themselves to females of recent.
That sounds good on paper, but the downside is made clear by the overwhelmingly male membership of the Masons. Women were only allowed recently through offshoot chapters. That's not the only way in which the Masons have struggled to adapt to the modern world. Many conventional lodges refuse to accept anyone who is not a white male, a struggle that continues to this day. So women and minorities run their own Masonic lodges, completely separated from the traditional bands of old white men. It's a strange, archaic, and unwritten rule that sours the Freemasons' modern reputation.
Definitely a way to network, definitely a way to improve social standings, but with the amount of civilians, the amount of everyday people that are in the Freemasonry groups, to me, at the very least, proves that this group is maybe overstated in their power and their positioning in the world. You see, I have no doubt that secret societies exist. I have no doubt that secret societies are something that are within the upper echelon of society. However, how much they are directly in function of governments, to me, leaves much to be desired. And this term that people use as a way to prove their existence.
That's why, do you know what the number one job of somebody that sold their soul in Hollywood is? Is to act like it didn't happen.
Selling your soul. What does it mean to sell your soul? When we look at the term selling your soul, it comes from a very theological, Abrahamic, and almost biblical understanding of the soul. That the devil's come down and stole your soul, tricked you into signing a contract with him.
Playboy Cardi. Now, check this out. She's flashing devil horns, okay? As we all know, the Krasenstein brothers, who are so hip and they know about hip hop and rock and roll, they said that what she was doing was rock gestures. You guys tell me, by the way, besides wearing the upside down cross in Balenciaga, tell me if this is a rock and roll thing or this is the horns of the devil. Go ahead, show that. Show that. Like, look at, she knows the camera's on her. That's giving shout out to the evil. That's evil. Look at, and Taylor's, what a role model she's drinking. But think about this. Let's not joke around. People were getting injured on the field, left and right. Who was their starting linebacker? He runs onto the field.
You don't think she's like a Texas Longhorns fan?
No, she's not. She's not from Texas. She's from the Bronx.
No, they're doing a kamikaze or something. See her slam it. I like the slam at the end.
This is. Let's be real. This is satanic. This isn't this. And then.
When in essence, when you use the text in which people who are defining the soul are inherently coming from, this Abrahamic understanding, this biblical Quran, in some ways, Torah understanding of the soul, to me resembles more of an erosion of character, selling yourself for a buck, doing anything for money. You see, I would argue that selling your soul has been misinterpreted in some sort of dark age understanding, some sort of Salem witch trial understanding of it. And it's more to do when someone will do anything for money, their soul has been sold. They've lost their character, they've lost their morality. Argued quite well within the biblical text. When you look at the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, they talk about, mostly what they talk about anyway, is giving back to the poor, how money is the root of all evil. Even one text says in the Bible, I believe it's Matthew chapter 19, where it said it's easier for a
disciples. Assuredly, I say to you that it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again, I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God.
So I believe these people who do anything for money have lost their souls and lost themselves to it. However, that concept doesn't just go for people at the top. It works for people at the bottom who hustle, do fraud, who do whatever to make a buck, trick and lie for money as well. And I believe that concept of selling your soul works across the board, across the class ladder. However, far too often it becomes this theatrical, almost pantomime understanding of it. And I believe sometimes that takes away from the true understanding of what our functions are in society, how our relationship with money dictates our own morality and feelings of self. As someone who's made many mistakes in the price of a buck, I definitely know for a fact that your soul is somewhat eroded when you're doing illegitimate things for money and you put money at the forefront of everything, even when you're telling yourself you're doing it for a greater purpose, a better purpose, to support your family. It still eats away at you, the darker things you do. However, that's just my interpretation and my understanding of selling your soul and what people mean by selling your soul really is.
So intricate that it's gained a cult following. I've heard of it, and so have you, but it's getting out of hand. 9 months ago, a post appeared on Reddit. It asks the question, does The Simpsons predict the future? From predicting the 2020 election of Donald Trump to Lady Gaga's Super Bowl halftime show, the question in this post has been asked many times. Something really bothered me about this post, with 0 upvotes. The responses to the latter half. It was a catastrophic flood of deranged theories, responses based around the idea of a new world order, explaining that The Simpsons is the vessel used by the ruling elite to tell us what's coming. And it wasn't just this thread. The dialogue is everywhere. The show's creator is a Freemason, Jeffrey Epstein, September 11th. These theories are endless, but they still leave the question open. The predictions. How are they doing it?
So there is the idea that The Simpsons predict the future. Many say that the creator, Matt Groener?
Stop writing mean stuff about me on Twitter, okay?
Many say that the creator, Matt Groener, is a 12th degree Mason. This is proof of secret societies and proof that there are powers at work using The Simpsons as a way to foreshadow what's about to come into power. Number one, I wonder why they're foreshadowing it. Number two, let's explore this idea because The Simpsons have been right about a number of things a number of times.
According to Zaremski, in 29 seasons, the show made about 120,000 jokes, with the assumption that the show kept the average pace of about 8.54 jokes per minute. This number was based off of the first 12 seasons. If The Simpsons got about 20 predictions right, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. This only comes out to about a 1.6% success rate. The chalk's too big. He concludes that statistics say that with that many predictions, they essentially just got lucky. Daniel Chun, a former co-executive producer for The Simpsons, echoes a similar sentiment as most of the show's staff has said when they were asked about the prediction phenomenon.
Saying, "We've made a zillion episodes of television,
And so that's a lot of at-bats, a lot of opportunity to make predictions. I don't think anyone's talking about the predictions that The Simpsons has gotten wrong, but the list is many times longer than the stuff they've gotten right.
So yes, I know that answer might leave you a bit dissatisfied. You probably wish I told you that they are a CIA agent, Matt Groening, the writers secretly work for the FBI and are aware of everything that's going on. Sadly, it seems to be more of a law of averages. The Simpsons have been around for a long time. Similar to Star Trek, similar to Futurama, that they have kind of winning the game of predictions by good writing, being around for a long time, and the law of averages. However, The Simpsons itself have had more predictions right than Star Trek, Futurama, or any other show. And why is it? It surely just can't be that they've been around for a long time and have a lot of episodes.
And it explains these.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run.
I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country, and if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally.
Trump hinted at the presidency 12 years before The Simpsons made this episode.
President Trump.
Yet again, a corny joke poking fun at something very real and very absurd. But this joke is making fun of something that's not in the public eye.
Would you ever?
Probably not.
Why would you not?
I just don't think I really have the inclination to do it. I love what I'm doing. I really like it.
Also, it doesn't pay as well.
No, it doesn't.
So here's the whole truth. We can finally put it to rest. The Simpsons are not predicting the future. It's just intricate writing.
Well, when you look at it, like 9/11, their prediction about 9/11, seems to be a coincidence, if not by chance. The episode itself that the reveal was in had nothing to do with 9/11, had nothing to do with terror. It was just a magazine cover with the number 9 and 11 on it.
In the episode The City of New York vs. Homer Simpson, which premiered in 1997, the family buys a New York City guidebook while they are visiting, and the cover has a price of $9 next to a picture of the Twin Towers. Some say that because this visually looks like 911 or 9/11, it's one of the show's many predictions. But writer Al Jean, who has been with the show since the beginning in 1989, says that this is, quote, totally coincidental.
It seems to be a simple coincidence. Things like the Trump prediction itself is intricate writing, good writing, awareness, and just a joke. When you look at something like the God particle, however,
Existence of the Higgs boson, the hypothetical subatomic particle thought to supply mass to the matter that makes up our universe. An experiment is to resume Wednesday at the Large Hadron Collider near Geneva, designed to catch a glimpse of the so-called God particle.
In 2012, scientists at CERN discovered the missing God particle, a previously unknown building block of our universe, today known as the Higgs boson.
It fundamentally changes our understanding of the universe.
It was a massive discovery for quantum physics.
There's nothing else like the Higgs in nature. This is a completely new kind of object.
Scientists believe that without the Higgs, there would be no gravity and no universe.
15 years earlier, in a 1998 episode, Homer wrote this equation on the blackboard. To viewers, it meant nothing. It was absolute jargon.
At that stage, so this is a long time ago, nobody knew the mass of the Higgs boson. Nobody even knew if it existed.
The equation predicted the mass of the missing God particle so precisely that he was only this far off.
this comes into something that people don't realize about The Simpsons. The Simpsons, the writers themselves, they come from many diverse backgrounds. They come from social sciences, philosophy, maths, engineering. They have their backgrounds in so many different things. So when they make jokes, and many writers themselves who watch this, I have friends that are writers as well, when they are discussing or writing about professions, even in a story in a fictional context, they will ask someone from that profession. If it's to do with law, they will ask a lawyer. If it's to do with doctors, they will ask a doctor what are the kind of correct terms. So in this God particle episode,
You know, when they came up with the equation for the Higgs boson, they could have come up with any old clutch of Greek symbols. But no, they picked genuine physical constants when combined in the right way gave a mass of the Higgs boson that was plausible. So they sort of said, whenever we put mathematics into the show, we've got to get it right. But we'll make sure it's true, we'll make sure it's accurate.
This mindset goes beyond math for the writers of The Simpsons.
These aren't just random things. These are equations that have a lot of thought put into them before they appear on screen.
Earlier in this video, I claimed that the equation on the blackboard was precise. He was only this far off. But this amount of error on the particle level is incredibly significant. They were way off.
From a particle physics point of view, it's not a very good equation.
The content on the blackboard was put there by a writer who had a pulse on mathematics. Something that's just not in the public eye. It wasn't even a prediction. It was a corny joke poking fun at something very real and very absurd, in true satire fashion.
And it comes down to, again, oversimplification of what the answer is. The Simpsons, the reason why The Simpsons has so many predictions correct is because of great writing. And the amount of episodes that they've had. I think trying to have this overarching point of view, this overarching that they are a Mason and they know everything that's going on, sometimes canonizes and sort of washes over what history is. The Trump prediction was a joke. And Donald Trump at the time was not only not the choice of the educated few, he wasn't the choice of the elites, the ruling elites, the secret powers behind the elites. He was an anomaly in some sense of the word, though he's a rich billionaire, which kind of follows a pattern in America.
We've done so many jokes over the many seasons that we've been on the air that eventually we're going to get something right. We always predict, what is the most, predict. We always write jokes on the things that are supposed to be the most absurd possibility, and it turns out that that's the way the world is these days, so everything seems to come true.
This canonizing of history is what happens a lot with conspiracies. Again, when you look at secret societies and what the secret societies are, if you for a moment and work with me, forget the name of Illuminati, forget the name of Freemasonry, forget the name of the Bilderberg Group, which has some credence to it, and think of secret societies as more elitism, the cult of elitism. People who earn and find their way into it are afraid to leave, so they keep secrets. They work with people, party with people who they may or may not normally would have prior to that. They compromise their morals in order to fit in. Others who are born into elitism often do things and consolidate power within those elite few, not realizing that they themselves are elite, thinking that they know better because of what they know and who they're around. I see secret societies and this cult of the Illuminati, this cult of Freemasonry, as more of a mask for what the true secret societies and cults are, which are elitism, white privilege to some people. This group and this cabal of power which is kept around a few and not the many. I hope that makes sense. I hope you understand that I'm trying to say what you think is the Illuminati and all this may be true, but what we can see for definite is that elitism itself is a cult and is where power is kept. And we should focus more on that than these mystery things that we are struggling and have yet to prove. However, that's not the only thing that underpins conspiracy theories about the New World Order, the Matrix, things of that nature. That's not the only thing.
The bloated bureaucracy is a big concern for conservatives. They say the federal bureaucratic state has become so huge that it is now a de facto fourth branch of government, and in fact, maybe the most powerful branch. As Paul Strand reports, experts will tell you it's completely unconstitutional.
If there's one thing the Founding Fathers cared about, it was liberty. And the last thing they would have wanted was an unelected bureaucracy that could steal your property, your rights, and even your freedom.
If you want to seal the border, vote Trump. If you want to restore law and order in this country, vote Trump. If you want to defeat the deep state, vote Trump.
Shadow government. What is shadow government? Many people argue that the deep state itself is the shadow government. It's not this secret smoking gun that people think it is. It's the FBI, it's the CIA, it's the Pentagon. It's institutions that are irrelevant of election cycles, irrelevant of who the president are.
And basically every president since Kennedy, they have been successful in what they call fearing up, where as soon as they come in, they read you the litany of horribles. And they go, these are all the threats that we're facing. And let's be real, it is a dangerous world. It's not just all made up BS. Some of it is, right, where it's inflated. It's not that it's completely false, but they make it sound more serious than it actually is. But there are real bad people out there who are trying to do real bad things. And you have just gone through a hellish election because our electoral politics are so diseased. And now, after you've crawled through fire, you're already thinking 4 years ahead. You know, how do I stay in this seat? And these guys are basically saying, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, this is going to fall on your lap. And the implication, which I don't think they actually say, but every president knows, is these guys can undermine you to death. If you've got the IC against you, right, they can stonewall you, they can put out stories that are going to be problematic for you every day of your presidency.
See, Edward Snowden's take on the CIA and FBI and how they're spying on us shows us one thing, that the continuity of government, the continuity of power lays in people who are not beholden to the people. Now, in the case of the CIA spying on us all the time.
Well, it's completely alien and it's new. This is something that's unprecedented. We don't have a long human history of being completely connected via technology. This is something we're navigating right now for the first time. And it's probably the most powerful thing that the human race has ever seen in terms of the distribution of information. There's nothing that even comes close to it in all of human history, and we're figuring it out as we go along. And what you exposed is that not only are we figuring out as we go along, but that to cover their ass, these cell phone companies in cahoots with the government have made it legal for them to gather up all of your phone calls, all of your text messages, all of your emails, and store them somewhere so that retroactively, if you ever say anything they don't like or do something they don't like, they can go back, find that, and use it against you.
Many people are aware of this. The expose on it was in front of us. Yet, I wonder why these conspiracies about shadow governments are not discussed more about when we look at the deep state, when we look at the CIA, when we look at the FBI. These are the powers behind the presidency. You see, they can make the life for the president very difficult if the president doesn't play ball with them, which is in adverse to what we believe the presidency should be. Surely it should be the other way around.
You're in a new space. Who were really the powerful people? Was it the director of CIA? Was it FBI? Was it the big pharma? Was it military-industrial complex guys that are General Dynamics? Yeah. Who were the people that are like, oh, I got you. You have, I never thought you had power. Who actually has
the
power?
most powerful person by far? The president. Power over everybody. Power. The power is enormous.
Most people don't believe that.
It is.
However, the executive branch of government doesn't have the power that we think it does.
But they said we were gonna get to it. We knew these programs were problematic, but if they just gave us more time, we would have fixed them. Maybe it's true, right? Seems awful convenient in hindsight that throughout the entirety of the first term.
Well, it seems like what you would say if you got caught.
Right. But look, if we're being the most generous that we are here, the president is briefed on real and legitimate threats, and they scare the hell out of him.
I'm sure.
And we can all imagine being there, right? Those of us who remember what the world was like post 9/11, fear is a powerful thing. But the guys who are doing that briefing, they're no longer scared of it. Because they've been dealing with this for years. This is the oldest thing. They've given this briefing times before. You know, when people talk about the deep state, right? They talk about it like some conspiracy of lizard people. It's not that. It's something much simpler. The deep state is simply the career government. It's the people who are in the same offices who outlive and outlast presidencies, right? They've seen Republicans, they've seen Democrats, they don't really care. And they give that same briefing again and again, and they get good at it. They know what they want. They know what this person's saying. Whereas the president, they don't know who these people are. These people have been there before the president. They're going to be there after the president. And so they give this very effective, very fear-inducing speech.
And I would argue that, again, shadow government oversimplifies it. The deep state and their control and their rule over presidency, elected officials. Instead of making a grand conspiracy, look at what we have. Look at the facts that we have. We're being spied on by our phones all the time, even if your phone's off. And sadly, that this happened in a moment of panic.
In a moment of fear, we lost our heads. And we abandoned all the traditional constitutional restraints that we put on these agencies. And we abandoned all of the traditional political restraints and just social constraints, ideological systems of belief about the limitations that the secret police should have in a free and open society. And we went, look, terrorists. We created shows like 24 and Jack Bauer, where he's like threatening to knife people's eyeballs out if they won't tell him this, that, or the other. And we entered this era of increasingly unlimited government as a result. And now, in hindsight, we go, oh, well, we shouldn't have been surprised. But at the time, everyone panicked, right? But if you go back to, did that help? And we know the answer now is, in fact, no, it did not. It made things worse. I don't think any historian is going to look at the Bush administration and go, this improved the position of the United States in the world. But if you go back, wind back the tape to that pre-9/11 moment, wind back the tape to those silos and those walls that they said needed to come down because that was restraining government, instead of the rules that said, well, you can share these things, but there's got to be a basis, there's got to be a justification. You've got to go, why are we trading people's information like baseball cards and all of this stuff? It's super easy as an intelligence officer to justify sharing information about a suspected terrorist who you think is planning to kill people, or is even just in a country they shouldn't be, or a place they shouldn't be, or doing something you don't think they should be.
And the reason I think this oversimplification happens, the reason I'm going to argue to you why we focus too much on the abstract rather than the facts in front of us, is because it's boring. It's complicated. It's hard. Surveillance increases after 9/11 in a way to protect us. And now we've compromised our surveillance, our privacy to government that we can't fully trust with our information, who sell our information for a buck for a number of reasons. And it comes down to a more important question, a philosophical question about how we operate, how we have governance of a secret police.
Patriots, but they were operating in a system free of accountability and transparency.
Even within the deep state, there are people who are doing things for altruistic and good reasons, and then there are people who are doing things for their own selfish or bad reasons, and exactly how many are in each category is sort of impossible to delineate.
I got sucked in when I should have known better, and where many other more intelligent, sophisticated people got sucked in other areas.
But because no one's going to question that. A judge isn't going to question that. Any judge in the world will stamp that warrant without even thinking about it and go,
how much of your freedom do you compromise for your safety? These foreign threats are real, may be exaggerated, but how much of that do we compromise? See, George Orwell argued for a while as well that you cannot give too much power, too much information to the state. They eventually will abuse it. And we now live in an era where the governments, social media companies have far too much information about us. They can create digital bodies about us. It is argued by some people, some scholars in this department, that social media companies and these algorithms have more information about you than your best friend, can predict if you're going through cycles of depression, happiness, loneliness, better than even yourself. And this all came out of the 9/11 attack.
That these attacks could have been prevented. And in fact, the government says this too. But the government goes, the reason that these attacks happened, the reason that they weren't prevented, is what they call stovepiping, right? There was not enough sharing. They needed to break down the walls and the restrictions that were chaining these poor patriots at the NSA and the CIA and the FBI from all working on the same team. And to some extent, they're correct on this, right? There were limits on the way agencies were supposed to play ball with each other, but I worked there, and I know how much of this is bullshit and how much of this is not. Those are procedural and policy limits, in some cases legal limits on what can be shared without following a process, without doing this, that, or the other, without basically asking for permission, without getting a sign-off, or anything like that. If the FBI wanted to send absolutely everything they had to the CIA, they could have done so. If the CIA wanted to send everything they had to the FBI, they could have done so. They didn't, and people died as a result. Now, government goes, bureaucratic proceduralism was responsible, and it's because we had too many restrictions on the intelligence community. And this is what led to the world post 9/11, where all of our rights sort of evaporated, was they went, well, restrictions on what these agencies can do are costing lives. Therefore, naturally, we just have to unchain these guys and everything will be better, right?
Where there was a lack of information sharing, which led to either accidental, purposely, the 9/11 attacks. I'll leave it up to you if you think that's a conspiracy theory. I'm kind of up in the air with that one. However, a deeper philosophical question needs to be asked, and I think sometimes focusing on these shadowy ideas of conspiracies, again, like I argued earlier, can kind of take away from the real reality of what we've got in front of us. That's not to say there's not conspiracies around the CIA. There's loads.
CIA coup in Congo, early 1960s. CIA coup in Chile, 1973. The assassination operation against General Schneider in 1970 is coordinated with Kissinger's office.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Mind control experiments, MK Ultra.
In 1950, the CIA launches a massive program to develop means of controlling people's minds. Some 40 U.S. academic institutions were involved in this kind of
LSD
research.
to people without their permission.
Can we develop a truth serum? Dosing somebody with LSD 60 times in a week. NSA's Operation Shamrock, electronic surveillance, 1945 to 1975. The first warrantless wiretapping.
Oh God, Bay of Pigs, nightmare.
There were hundreds of CIA assassination plots.
Operation Phoenix.
Eventually, Bill Colby, who was later director, admitted that they had killed 20,000 people.
Operation Mockingbird,
COINTELPRO,
Operation Chaos, Watergate, Jim Critchfield, Frank Wiesner, James Angleton, Roosevelt, John Foster Corey.
CIA coup in Indonesia, CIA coup in Greece, CIA involvement in the Guatemalan Civil War. It was a CIA crime spree for 20 years. There's no other way to describe it.
And that clip there just names a few. Just names a few. So, with that information, ask yourself, do you trust the CIA knowing this much about you?
Absolutely not.
However, before I finally end this, because it's going on for a while, we're going to focus on one final underpinning of the New World Order, the Matrix.
So, it's while we live in the crazy world of flags and countries and nations and conflict and war, it's interesting to note that there are international organisations that transcend those old-fashioned 19th century versions of what territory looks like. The terrain is entirely different now. The terrain is financial. The terrain may be ideological. It may be technological, but it certainly doesn't exist on this lo-fi cultural level where we all squabble and squawk, competing for space in a world where increasingly power exists way beyond the reach of any democratic procedure.
Multinational companies, do they run the world? when the conspiracy theory starts to have water holds weight. BlackRock is one group that you can name that secretly has a lot more power than people realize.
Most people have never heard of, and this company quite literally owns the world. Most US banks are controlled by BlackRock. BlackRock owns all the major pharmaceutical companies. BlackRock owns most of the mainstream media, and BlackRock oversees roughly 10% of all stocks traded worldwide. And this company is now taking over governments. All of this has allowed BlackRock to amass $10 trillion in assets. Yes, trillion. BlackRock is worth half of America's total GDP. It's so crazy that the US and Chinese government now rely on BlackRock to escape recessions, with BlackRock's founder and CEO now sitting on the boards of the influential Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum. In the words of Henry Kissinger, whoever controls the money controls the world, and no other company in history has had this much global influence.
They have an algorithm called Aladdin, which seems like a cheat code which can help them predict how and where the market is going, is how they've developed such a large market share, and they hold and wield so much power over governments. So when people argue the idea that there's a new world order, there is a matrix controlling things, I think sometimes it can be a bit too abstract, a bit too loose, and lacks the true underpinning to focus in this argument for it to be tangible. Perhaps it's not a new world order or one world order. It's because those arguments themselves are very problematic, steeped in xenophobia, sometimes racism, sometimes Cold War propaganda. In the case of secret societies, a lack of research, a lack of information behind them. However, when you start to look at them from more practical and tangible real-world examples, you can see the roots and where they come from. Too much power afforded to deep state unelected officials, too much power and freedom given to these multinational companies because governments are in bed with them. They fund them to an extreme degree. Too much power and resources have been funneled into them as well. Constantly, the architects of economic crisis are also the architects of bailing them out. Companies working better in crisis, hence why we constantly feel in a state of economic crisis, war profiteering. These things are very real. And again, I'm not trying to say this to scare people, but I am saying it that BlackRock is one of those names behind it. They handle so many of these assets. They work better in crisis. It's a fact. But the fact that we've afforded so much power, so much resources into the financial sector, the multinational, international companies, tax breaks that we've given to them, I believe would be a better way to start to look at this conspiracy of a new world order.
This is what real world conspiracies look like, right? It doesn't have to be smoking men behind closed doors, right? It's lawyers and politicians. It's ordinary people from the working level to the management level who go, if we don't explain this in a certain way, we're all going to lose our jobs.
I believe it would be better to look at this in a more tangible way and attack the idea of why have we afforded so many resources and freedoms to these companies when the people who are supposed to reap the benefits of them don't. You see, we now live in a society that is for businesses and corporations rather than the people. We have now ideologically and resources-wise moved away from a people-focused approach to a corporation consolidating of power within government-focused approach. You see, we don't need to create these massive grand conspiracies, even though some have merit and truth to them, to really see where the problems lay. They're quite practical, and as Edward Snowden said, many conspiracies, what you believe to be conspiracies, are with people trying to keep power, keep secrets, and are lawyers in a room. However, each of them asks us a deeper philosophical question. That philosophical question itself being in the terms of financial sector holding so much power, are they the secret power behind government?
Glendon Hill fronts Sandcorp Industries. Sandcorp is deep into natural gas. I don't give a hoot about natural gas, but I have 67 deputy whips and they all need cash to win races. Sandcorp helps me purchase loyalty, and in return, they expect mine. It's degrading, I know, but But when the tit's that big, everybody gets in line.
Have we gone too far with capitalism? Do we break up the big banks? How does that affect people in their day-to-day? How do we, in some shape or form, return power back to the people? Does that inevitably lead it back to corporations? Because greed seems to center so much of what capitalism is. Is there an inherent greed and jealousy within people that any system, whether that be socialism, whether that be capitalism, is doomed for corruption? In the case of secret societies, do we focus too much on the abstract of consolidation of power without realizing that the secret society of elitism is right in front of our face and even more strange than we had thought? Again, when it comes to shadowy governments, these institutions that in one sense protects us, in another sense abuses us and sells our rights. How do we manage that? Do we defund the police? Do we get rid of the CIA? It asks far more deeper philosophical questions. Conspiracy theories are birthed out of times of crisis, birthed out of times of confusion, and can often do more to steer us away from what the truth is and the real world solutions, because the overall argument is quite boring, quite placid, and requires a deep, complex understanding of both sides of the problem in order to fix it.
Obsessing about conspiracies because somehow it's actually reassuring to think that there's some great network or some purpose, when in fact the world is chaotic and random and terrible things happen.
And Iraq was just a horrible foreign policy mistake.
And we can't get our heads around it.
You see, as a journalist, I would love to believe in conspiracy theorists because they're much better stories. But almost everything I've ever investigated, it turns out cock-up is a better explanation than conspiracy.
Yes, I know people put a lot of work into conspiracy theories, but I still think they're actually intellectually lazy. I think, people just don't want to get their head around the way things really work. That having been said, let me say firstly that, a lot of people are gullible about conspiracies. I think the police were extremely gullible about the Downing Street paedophile ring, as it turns out. And on the other hand, I'll just end my comment with this point. There clearly was a conspiracy over Hillsborough.
Okay guys, so thank you for that. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it made sense. I hope I didn't sound like a bunch of jargon and waffle. I really, really hope that didn't happen. However, put into the comments what you like, put into the comments what you thought about it, put into your comments if you think I was waffling. I tried to kind of, in one sense, debunk the conspiracy, but showed the real world example of how the conspiracy lives and stays in society. I hope I was making sense. When you're the one speaking, it can sound like a load of jargon. However, I don't want to bore you for too long or excite you for too long. Either way, too much is never a good thing. And I will see you next week for something slightly maybe more light-hearted, maybe not. I don't know. I never planned that far ahead. I'm out though. Peace.
The New World Order is now officially, in 2016, that's what the Supreme Court Justice was telling Drudge. Get ready, it's all going to start next year. And it is. They're going from beta to 1.0.